The sound she made when the key didn't work was almost funny, like a squirrel hiccuping. Click, rattle, jiggle, pause. Then again click, rattle, jiggle, swear. I was sitting on the staircase inside, lights off, holding the key I just replaced hers with. It was still warm in my palm. Outside, her heels scraped against the welcome mat she picked out last spring. It said, "Our happy place." The irony nearly choked me. "Emery," she called through the door. Voice rising now. "What the hell? The key won't turn. Are you inside?" Silence. I let it stretch. Then came the knock. Gentle at first, then louder. "Emery, don't play games. It's freezing. Let me in." She had a to-go box in her hand. I could see it through the sidelight window. A clear plastic container with something leafy and expensive. I imagined Theo, still at the restaurant, smiling like the smug idiot he probably was, not knowing the woman he kissed goodnight was locked out of the home she thought was hers. She pulled out her phone and called me. My cell lit up in my lap. I answered, but didn't speak. "Why is the door locked?" she snapped. "Why did you change the lock?" I whispered, "This isn't your house anymore." She laughed. Actually laughed. A dry, condescending little huff. "What are you even talking about?" I stood up slowly. My legs were shaking not with rage, just with months of holding it all in. "You said dinner with Amanda." "That's what you said." "Amanda." "Emery, open the damn door." I did. 6 years ago. That shut her up. I leaned against the wall and waited. I wanted her to say something real. Not perform. Not manipulate. Just say something human. But all she said next was, "You're being insane. You can't lock me out of my own house." And there it was. That word again. Her favorite. Insane. Used to deflect, dismiss, minimize. She'd used it when I cried in the driveway last winter. She used it when I begged her to talk to me instead of texting someone at 2 a.m. I walked to the front door, placed my hand against it gently, and whispered loud enough for her to hear. "There's a hotel 2 exits down. They allow late check-ins. You'll need a place to think. Emery." But I'd already hung up. Outside, she called my name again. But inside, it was peaceful for the first time in months. I just stood there and listened. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay on the living room floor with a blanket draped over me and Moose curled up against my feet, his soft breaths the only sign that time hadn't frozen completely. I wasn't crying. I wish I had. Crying would have felt more honest. But what I felt was emptier than tears. I kept listening for any sound outside, but she didn't knock again. I imagined her walking down the driveway in those ridiculous heels, trying to figure out who she could call at midnight who didn't already know the truth. Sometime around 3 a.m., I finally stood up and walked into my kitchen. I opened the fridge and saw the half-eaten casserole I'd made the night before, the one she claimed she wasn't hungry for. I almost laughed. She didn't even bother pretending anymore. She just didn't want food made by me. That stung more than it should have. By morning, I had a plan. Not a revenge plan. I'm not that guy. I wasn't going to slash tires or post dramatic Facebook rants. But I knew I needed something to make the moment real, to show her, and maybe myself, that the switch had flipped. That I wasn't going to stand around waiting for her to hand me scraps of affection anymore. She called 3 more times before 10 a.m. I let them ring out. She didn't bother with voicemails anymore. Probably figured I was sulking, or trying to make a point. In her world, everything was about dramatics. Maybe she thought I was trying to punish her for staying out late. The truth? I wasn't punishing her. I was protecting myself. Around noon, I checked the doorbell camera history, and there she was. Sometime at 6:21 a.m., she returned. She stood outside for a full 3 minutes, pacing. No knocking. Just pacing. Then she stared directly into the camera lens and smiled. Not apologetically. Not nervously. But with this odd, superior calmness, like I was the one who needed to be ashamed. That smile wasn't for me. That smile was for control. I watched the footage 3 times. And each time, something inside me hardened. Not with rage. Not even hate. Just clarity. It was like watching someone else's wife, not mine. Like the person in that footage had stolen Laurel's face and voice but none of her soul. Or maybe she never had the soul I imagined in the first place. I started packing her things in silence. I didn't throw anything, didn't rip photos or smash perfume bottles. I folded her clothes like I was preparing for a trip she'd always wanted but hadn't earned. I found 2 drawers of lingerie I hadn't seen in years. She used to giggle when she wore those. Now they felt like costumes from someone else's life. I boxed everything. Labeled it neatly. took photos of each label and sent them to her with a short message. Your things are ready. You can pick them up between 5 and 6. After that, I'll leave them outside. That's not a threat. Just logistics. She didn't respond. But 5 o'clock came, and so did she. When the doorbell rang, I didn't answer it right away. I stood at the top of the stairs, watching her through the front window. She was wearing a hoodie I bought her during our trip to Asheville. The one where we got rained in for 3 days and watched every single Harry Potter movie out of order. That hoodie used to mean something. Now it just looked like a disguise. I finally opened the door. She looked at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. You're seriously doing this, she said. No greeting. Her voice was cool. Polished. I already did it, I replied. She glanced at the boxes like they offended her. You're being dramatic. I nodded, slowly. Yeah, but I'm not being dishonest. For a moment, I thought I saw something flicker in her eyes, surprise, maybe. Or fear. But it vanished as quickly as it came. She stepped forward, but I didn't move. I can't stay here tonight, she asked, softer now. Just to talk. You had a place last night, I said. Was it not comfortable? Her jaw clenched. Then she did something I'll never forget. She looked past me into the house I spent 12 years building with her, and said, like she was asking about a pair of shoes, do you think I left my sunglasses in the upstairs bathroom? I didn't answer. I just handed her a box marked bathroom/miscellaneous and shut the door. No yelling. No scene. Just the quiet end of a life I had believed in too much, too long. And behind that closed door, I finally let the tears come. The boxes sat untouched on the porch overnight. Even though she showed up, even though we stood face to face just hours earlier, Laurel hadn't bothered to take them with her. She left them there, like a test. Like she expected me to chase her down the driveway and beg her to come back, to explain things, to promise I'd try harder, love better, become whatever she needed. But I didn't. Not this time. I left the boxes exactly where she abandoned them and went to bed, alone, in the middle of our mattress, surrounded by too much space and too much quiet. I stared at the ceiling for hours, trying to remember the last night we fell asleep holding hands. I couldn't. Somewhere along the way, even our fingertips forgot each other. The next morning, I woke to rain. Not a soft drizzle, real, relentless rain that came sideways against the windows and drowned the porch in puddles. I got up, put on a hoodie, and opened the front door. There they were, all 6 boxes, soaked through. Cardboard curling at the edges. Ink from my labels running like cheap mascara. I thought about moving them inside. Then I didn't. I closed the door and walked away. Because here's the thing. Laurel had always believed she was the smart one. The one with the plan. The manipulator. The strategist. She'd walk into rooms already calculating everyone's weaknesses, filing them away like weapons in her purse. She never yelled. She didn't have to. Her silence was sharper than any insult. She weaponized distance. And she was good at it. But she forgot something. Actually, 3 things. The first was that I wasn't as naive as I looked. She thought she'd played this game without leaving fingerprints. She was wrong. Weeks before the lock incident, I already knew something was happening. And not just the generic, something's off feeling. I knew who. I knew when. I even knew what hotel. Not because I hired a PI, I couldn't afford one. But because she logged into our Netflix account from his place and forgot to turn off location sharing. The top left corner of the screen said, watching in. Franklin Hotel, room 503. The second thing she didn't know? I had already spoken to Theo. Not a fight. Not some pathetic confrontation. I sat across from him in a coffee shop 3 blocks from his office. I wore a blue button-down. He wore arrogance like a badge. I told him who I was, and he didn't even pretend to be surprised. He just sipped his coffee and said, "This is between me and Laurel." I smiled. Not anymore. I changed the locks. He blinked once. Then nodded. Bold move. Wasn't meant to be bold, I said. Just necessary. And I left. No threats. No theatrics. But I saw something in his eyes as I walked away, a flicker of realization. That maybe I wasn't as spineless as she'd described. And the third thing? The one she'd never imagined? I'd already filed the paperwork. Quietly. Precisely. I met with an attorney 2 towns over. I made copies of everything. Assets. Mortgage. Bank statements. I didn't make demands. I made a boundary. One she couldn't charm or threaten her way through. So when she texted me that afternoon, "We need to talk, for real this time. Just us." I didn't reply immediately. I waited. I walked moose. I listened to the rain. I stared at the space where her car used to be. Then I sent back one sentence. You should bring your own pin. She responded a minute later. What does that mean? But I never answered. Later that night, she returned for the boxes. I watched from the upstairs window as she tried to lift one and the bottom gave out, spilling bras, lotions, receipts, and a tiny framed photo of us in Maine onto the wet concrete. She stood there, staring at it, like she couldn't recognize the faces in the frame. She left it behind. I didn't go down to pick it up. I left it in the rain. Because that moment, that soggy photo bleeding color into the cracks of the porch was the perfect symbol of what she destroyed. Not with a bang, but with 1,000 tiny lies and one very deliberate choice. And now, the house was mine again. But peace? Peace had its own price. The day after she picked up the ruined boxes, I got a dinner invitation. Not from Laurel. From her mother. It came through email. A polite, carefully composed message that made my skin crawl in a way I couldn't explain. Subject line. Let's talk. Just us. Body. Emery, I'd like to invite you over for dinner this Friday. No pressure. I just appreciate a conversation face to face. I'm making your favorite. She even signed it, warmly, Patricia. Now, you have to understand, Patricia and I were never close. For 13 years, we coexisted in a cold, polite truce. She always looked at me like I was a temporary inconvenience, not a life partner. The kind of woman who pinched her wine glass by the stem and said things like, some people simply don't evolve. She wore silk robes in the morning and called her own daughter emotionally elusive like it was charming. So why was she emailing me now? I stared at the message for half an hour, rereading every line like it contained some kind of hidden threat. I considered ignoring it, but something inside me, some strange, sharp intuition told me to go. Not to make peace, but to hear whatever it was she thought I didn't already know. Friday night came, and I put on a sweater Laurel had once bought me for Christmas. It still smelled faintly of cedar and laundry detergent, though it had been stuffed in the back of the closet for months. I drove through the foggy hills toward Patricia's house, the one with the white shutters and the impossible driveway she insisted on backing down in reverse. When I pulled up, the porch light was on. I knocked, and she opened the door wearing pearls. Emery, she said softly, as if I was a soldier returning from war. Thank you for coming. I walked in, and everything smelled like rosemary and butter. It was almost disorienting, like someone had dressed a battlefield in candlelight and linen. Dinner was already plated. I sat. She poured wine. You probably hate me, she said before I even picked up a fork. I don't, I replied. But I'm not sure why I'm here. Patricia took a long sip of wine, then folded her hands. Laurel lied to you. A lot. But I'm guessing you already knew that. I didn't respond. She continued. She told me she was just exploring her options. That you were predictable, too gentle. She said Theo was temporary, just a phase. She never thought you'd actually walk away. I looked at her. She told you everything? She always has. Whether I asked or not. A silence stretched across the table. I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the other room. I need to tell you something, she said, voice lowering. Something she never wanted you to know. That made my heart stall. She's been planning to leave since January. She didn't know how to do it without risking the house. She was waiting for the right moment or the right legal advantage. But when you changed the locks, it ruined the plan. That's why she's unraveling. You weren't supposed to make the first move. My skin prickled. She was going to take the house? I asked, stunned. Why? She never even wanted to live here when we bought it. She wanted the security, Patricia replied. And she thought if you looked like the one who shut her out, she'd have leverage. I stood up slowly. Why are you telling me this? Patricia looked tired. Older than I remembered. She touched the edge of her wine glass but didn't lift it. Because I think you loved her. Actually loved her. Not for what she gave you, but for who you believed she was. And because she's never loved anyone more than herself. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to laugh. But all I did was nod. As I walked toward the door, she called out, "There's one more thing." I turned. She's not with Theo anymore. I froze. Since when? He dumped her. 3 days ago. I swallowed. Why? He said, and I quote, "She scares me." That night, I drove home with the windows down, the cold air slicing across my face. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt free, in the kind of quiet, unfamiliar way that doesn't rush in like a storm, but arrives like a whisper. But the peace wouldn't last, because Laurel was coming back. And this time, she wasn't knocking. It was Sunday morning when I heard the back door open. Not knock, not creak, not jiggle. Open. At first I thought maybe I'd forgotten to relock it after taking Moose out, but I never forget things like that anymore. I'm not that version of myself. The distracted, overworked fool who missed every red flag because he believed love was immune to erosion. That guy's gone. And yet, the door had opened. I was in the upstairs hallway folding laundry when I heard her voice. Emery. The sound of it, soft, high, like she was slipping on her best innocence, made my spine go rigid. I moved to the top of the stairs and looked down. Laurel was standing in the middle of my kitchen. My kitchen. She was wearing that same black coat with the fur-trimmed collar, the one I always thought made her look like a movie villain, which now felt painfully appropriate. Her eyes scanned the room like she was searching for something to recognize, something to claim. She held her phone in one hand and a set of duplicate keys in the other. You made copies, I said, not a question. She didn't flinch. Of course I did. You think I'd just hand over my life without a backup plan? I descended 2 steps. This isn't your life anymore. She gave a tight, humorless smile. That's funny, coming from the man who used to cry if I forgot to say I love you before leaving for work. I didn't rise to the bait. What do you want, Laurel? I want to talk, she said, walking toward the counter like she still owned the place. And before you say anything, no, this isn't about getting back together. I'm not here to throw myself at your feet or beg for forgiveness. I know you'd love that, but no. She paused, picked up one of the mugs drying by the sink, the blue one with the chipped handle, and turned it slowly in her hands. You're doing all this to prove a point, she said. Changing the locks, boxing up my things, talking to my mother. You talked to Patricia? I asked. She laughed once. She sent me a photo of the dinner table, told me I lost something I'll never replace. She rolled her eyes. You two deserve each other. I didn't ask her to. It doesn't matter, she interrupted. I didn't come to fight. I stayed on the staircase, close enough to see her clearly, far enough that I wouldn't be tempted to close the distance out of habit or weakness. She looked around again. You changed the curtains, she said. Yes. And you took down the photo wall. Yes. She sighed softly. You know, I thought I'd hate you by now. I'm sure you tried, I said. She nodded slowly, eyes never meeting mine. I thought I'd hate you, but I don't. I envy you. I didn't know how to respond to that. Part of me wanted to laugh. Part of me wanted to yell. But mostly I just felt tired. Laurel, why are you here? She turned toward the window. Because Theo wasn't what I thought he'd be. Because the apartment I rented smells like mildew. Because every night I lie awake wondering how someone as gentle as you managed to become so unbreakable. I walked the rest of the way down the stairs. She turned to face me. I made a mistake. You made a choice, I corrected. A long pause passed between us. Her face shifted, not into guilt, but something stranger. Almost curiosity. Who is she? She asked suddenly. What? Who is she? The woman who taught you how to say things like that. Who helped you find this version of yourself. I stared at her, blinking slowly. There's no one, I said, and I meant it. But in that moment, I could see it, her plan forming. She didn't come back to apologize. She came back to compete. To re-enter the game not because she missed me, but because she missed control. Don't do this, I said quietly. Her smile returned, cold and graceful, like a mask slipping back into place. You think locking me out was the end of the story, Emery, she whispered. But I'm not finished. She walked out the front door without another word. And this time, she didn't need a key. Because she had something more dangerous than a key. She had intention. And I realized, far too late, that locking someone out doesn't mean they won't find another way in. For the next 2 days, nothing happened. At least, not in the traditional sense. No surprise visits, no texts, no key scratches on my car door. Just silence. And for a moment, I started to believe maybe that was it. Maybe her storm had passed, and she'd found someone else's roof to crash under. But silence from Laurel was never just silence. It was strategy. It was a breath before a plunge. I didn't hear from her again until Wednesday night, and even then, it wasn't a phone call or a message. It was voicemail, 6 of them, left back-to-back at 2:13 a.m. I hadn't heard the phone ring because I'd muted it before bed, but there they were, stacked neatly in my inbox like little landmines. I played the first one, a low buzz of background noise, music, chatter, maybe clinking glasses, then her voice, slurred slightly, but unmistakably hers. Hey, Emery. I don't know. I know I'm not supposed to call. I know you think I'm the enemy now. Maybe I am. But I'm not. I'm not all bad, you know. Click. That was it. The second started immediately after. I mean, I did what I did, okay? I messed things up. But you made it so easy to walk away. You always did. You'd just sit there, looking like a kicked puppy, and I'd get so tired of waiting for you to grow teeth. I paused the message, heart pounding. What did that even mean? The third voicemail hit harder. I saw your Instagram. That stupid post with the tree and the quote about healing. Who are you healing from, huh? Me? Or the version of me you made up in your head? That one lingered. Because I hadn't posted anything. I reopened the app, and there it was. A photo I'd taken days earlier, just a bare tree against a winter sky. No caption. No hashtags. Nothing special. I'd posted it late at night and forgotten about it. But she hadn't. I pressed play on the fourth. You think people don't talk, Emery? You think I don't hear things? My cousin saw you at the bar with that brunette girl, the one from your office. You looked happy. Is that what this is? Some midlife reinvention? Are you going to start wearing leather jackets next? I froze. I hadn't been on a date. Not once. The brunette girl? That was Erin from accounting. We'd met for a drink because our department lost 2 employees and she was panicking about payroll. But now I understood. She was spiraling. The fifth voicemail was the worst. I was never going to leave you. I was just figuring things out. You rushed it. You locked the door before I could even knock. And the last one? Pure venom. You don't get to rewrite the story, Emery. You don't get to be the victim. You don't get to pretend you were some innocent bystander in a marriage you barely showed up for. Click. I sat there for a long time, just holding my phone in the dark, those messages echoing in my ears. It was strange. In all the chaos of the past few weeks, I'd never truly been afraid of Laurel. Confused by her, yes. Hurt by her, definitely. But afraid? Now I was. Not of what she'd do, but of how far she might go to feel in control again. And she was already starting to distort the narrative. The first crack in the glass. That evening, I got a call from my boss. Very casual, very polite. Hey, just checking in. Everything all right at home? I said yes. Of course. Why? Oh, it's just, someone called anonymously and mentioned something about your emotional stability. Said you might not be in the right headspace to manage a team right now. I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter. Laurel. She was already planting seeds, turning quiet revenge into collateral damage. That night, I changed every password I had. Email, bank, socials. I installed a new camera on the back porch. Moose slept with one eye open, and I started documenting everything. Because when someone like her starts losing control, they don't beg, they build a trap. And I had a sick feeling she was far from finished building hers. Friday night, I woke up gasping. Not from a nightmare, from silence. That kind of thick, paralyzing quiet that presses on your chest like wet cement. The kind that tells you something is wrong before you even move. Moose wasn't at the foot of the bed. The house was completely still. I checked the time, 3:17 a.m. When I sat up, I felt it instantly. Something was different. The pillow beside me, the one I hadn't touched in weeks, had been moved. I reached under it instinctively, and there it was, a piece of folded paper. Not typed, not sealed, just tucked there like a whispered threat in handwriting I knew too well. Black ink, slightly smudged, one corner torn like it had been pulled from a notebook in a rush. It read, "You think you're safe because you have locks. But I've always known the parts of you that are still unlocked. The ones you never guard. The ones that kept hoping I'd come back. No name, no date, no signature. But I didn't need one. I jumped out of bed, heart hammering, and ran to check every door and window. Everything was locked. Deadbolts secure. Nothing broken, no signs of forced entry. But someone had been inside my house while I slept. Not robbed. Not vandalized. Invited by memory. By something I hadn't purged completely. And I knew, beyond any doubt, that it was her. Laurel wasn't just sending voicemails now. She was escalating. Not loud. Not violent. Just surgical. The kind of psychological invasion that doesn't leave bruises, just shadows. I checked the backyard cam footage. It was dark, grainy. But at 2:41 a.m., motion detection activated. A figure. No face. No clear shape. Just the silhouette of someone walking away from my house toward the woods that bordered the property. Calm. Unhurried. Confident. Like they knew they didn't need to run. I downloaded the clip and emailed it to myself. Then backed it up, Twice. I didn't call the cops. Not yet. What would I even say? Hi, my ex-wife may or may not have snuck into my house and left a cryptic note under my pillow. They'd ask for proof. They'd ask if I'd given her a spare key. They'd ask if I had a restraining order. I had none of those things. Instead, I called the one person I hadn't spoken to since this started. Erin, from accounting. The brunette at the bar Laurel had mentioned in her voicemails. She answered on the second ring. Emery, are you okay? I nearly cried hearing that question. I didn't realize how badly I needed someone to ask it. I need a favor, I said, keeping my voice low. And I know it's weird, and I know we barely know each other outside of emails and complaints about printer toner. But I need to meet. Now. Public place. She didn't hesitate. There's a 24-hour diner by the freeway. I can be there in 15. 20 minutes later, I slid into the booth across from her. She wore a hoodie and jeans, no makeup, hair pulled back. She looked concerned. Real. Present. Like the opposite of everything I'd been drowning in for months. I handed her the note. Her eyes scanned it twice, then looked up at me. She wrote this. I nodded. And she left it where you sleep? I nodded again. She let out a slow breath. You need help. The legal kind. I know, I whispered. But I needed someone to read it first. Someone real. For the next hour, I told her everything. Every voicemail. Every visit. The camera footage. The anonymous call to my boss. I didn't hold back. And to her credit, Erin didn't look away once. She didn't interrupt. She just listened, as if absorbing a story too heavy for one person to carry alone. When I finally stopped talking, she reached across the table and placed her hand on mine. You're not crazy, she said. But she's trying to make you feel like you are. That's what people like her do when they start losing their grip. They make you question the floor under your feet. I swallowed hard. You need a restraining order, she continued. And you need to talk to someone, a therapist, a lawyer, anyone trained to handle people who manipulate like this. I nodded. I didn't have words left. Just fatigue and fear. Not of Laurel, but of how close I'd come to thinking all of this was normal. By the time I got home, the sun was rising. I walked through the house slowly, deliberately, as if reclaiming each room from the memory of her. And that night, for the first time in weeks, I slept with the lights on. Because a locked door is only protection when the danger stays outside. But Laurel? She had learned to walk through walls. It took me 3 more weeks to file the papers. Not because I hesitated, that hesitation had died the night I found the letter under my pillow, but because I wanted to do it right. Quietly. Cleanly. With dignity. Laurel thrived on reaction, on chaos, on heat. I gave her none of it. My attorney was a man named Derek who wore ugly socks and spoke with the calm confidence of someone who'd seen everything. You don't need to justify anything, he told me gently as I handed him the final packet of signed documents. Sometimes survival looks like leaving before the fire gets worse. He didn't know the half of it. I changed my locks again, but this time I had them installed professionally. I registered the camera footage. Filed a police report. I didn't accuse, didn't dramatize, just documented. Step by step, I built a boundary around my life. Not a wall. A gate. One I could open or close on my terms. Laurel tried once more, one final attempt, 2 weeks after the report. I got a letter in the mail. Not hand-delivered. Not dramatic. Just a plain white envelope, no return address, no handwriting typed. It said, I didn't want it to end like this. You were the safest place I ever had. And I ruined it. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know, part of me still loves the way you folded laundry. That was it. And for the first time, I didn't feel twisted inside reading her words. I didn't feel pulled, or manipulated, or cracked open. I just felt done. I shredded the letter. Took Moose on a long walk through the park she hated going to, said the grass made her shoes muddy. Moose rolled in a puddle, barked at a bird, and I let him. We sat on a bench for 20 quiet minutes, watching families pass, watching light fall through trees. Peace doesn't come like thunder. It comes slowly, like warmth crawling back into your fingers after a long winter. I started sleeping with the lights off again. I finally took down the blue mug from the drying rack and replaced it with a new one, dark green, heavy in the hand, something I picked out myself at a local pottery shop. A woman named Claire helped me choose it. She ran the register. We talked for 20 minutes about dogs, local bakeries, and why people always say, I'm fine, when they're clearly not. I saw her again a week later. This time, I asked her to join me for coffee. We laughed, real laughter. The kind that doesn't come from irony or pain or survival. The kind that bubbles up because it wants to be heard. It's not a love story. Not yet. But it's something. The locks on my doors are stronger now. But more importantly, the lock on my self-worth is finally in place. And that's something no one will ever pick again.